Okay, so welcome back to a new classical analysis. This is my first game in the new cycle, first classical game of 2024. I played it at the Marshall Chess Club, and I missed the first round, unfortunately, due to healing from some dental work, but I was able to receive a half point bye. And moving on to the second game, which is the first that I got to play. I was faced as black up against Peter Brink, a 1467. And this was my first time ever playing Peter. And I wanted to come into some aggressive fashion into the new year. So let's get straight to it. Peter opens with e4, and I decided to go for a Sicilian just to see to start. We get knight c3, knight c6. Took me a second when I first started because I was really trying to remember some proper structures in close Sicilian lines. That's something that I'm still I don't see a ton of. I'm not seeing a lot of close Sicilians at my level. So this was one of the first times that I've actually seen it over the board, especially in a classical game. So I chose to take this time to kind of come up with a plan. But also, I have a friend in the park who plays a lot of these lines when I see close Sicilians. So I kind of conceptualized already some of the main attacking plans. My opponent goes for standard opening approach, bringing a knight out, and then I go e6. And we get c4. Now we've reached kind of a complete equality right off the bat. And I go knight f6, just kind of playing waiting moves, getting my stuff developed. And we get d3, d5, and takes. I took right away. I feel like this is fine. I feel like normally black is totally fine having these two pawns here. I've got a little bit of space in the middle of the board. My opponent's traded that off. We're going to have an open file, probably in a castle, but I'll back up in castle as well, and we'll see what we can do here. My opponent plays the pin, and I respond with a6, which isn't really the best move. It actually starts to sway back advantage towards my opponent, but I think neither of us were looking to go too crazy. But my opponent plays a really bad move here. It's bishop a4. And unfortunately, I'm seeing some arrows right away, which so you'll start to see where I've gone wrong. The main move is going to be here is going to be just to immediately swing at this bishop. And something that I didn't conceptualize right off the bat is that this pawn here will be defending my c pawn. So say, for instance, we get the bishop coming back after a move like this. Immediately, you can now trap the bishop. This is just a simple, I believe they call it a Noah's Ark, I think. And for some reason, I didn't see this right away. I was also, as the title of the subtitle of this states, I was in blitz mode. I was moving way too fast. I was thinking maybe for 30 seconds to a minute per move at the start, other than my kind of general game plan moment. But here I should have really sat down for a second and calculated how easy it is to miss that this attack is here, but c'est la vie. Instead, I decided I was thinking that I would keep the b5 move in my back pocket. I knew that I could play it. I didn't even consider that it was going to be such a devastating move, so I played this pin, just developing yet another piece. And now my opponent can do all sorts of stuff. I think here, here's the obviously the other line. But here, I think my opponent should have maybe taken right away, and then we got something like this and go from there. But I'm still trying to figure it out. So my opponent castles instead, and now the advantage goes back to me. I'm back up to a pretty clear advantage. I can keep doing the same thing. I could press on with b5, and instead I play bishop e7 because I don't know what I'm doing still. We get queen e2, and I castle, and now I'm just for some reason I'm defending things. We get We're still at like slight advantage black. I'm right now though so confident in this game, and I believe to myself that like I'm like totally fine. But I keep getting the advantage, and then I keep slipping it, and then keep getting the advantage, and keep slipping it. So it's really funny to see. I really need to like just sit down and calculate. Like these are 90-30 games. I have to remind myself that that's a long time, and that I have a long time to think. I do believe by the time that this game ends, we both have, yeah, by move 26, we both have an hour on our clock. So we both only used 30 minutes plus the 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 um the extra stuff there. So such is life. So anyway, my opponent goes for some counterplay. Just like if I attack, you attack, and now I'm in complete control. I play b5. Ta-da! We did it. I'm supposed to be winning a free piece right here. My opponent plays bishop e3, and I play c4. My opponent takes, and I don't know what happens here. I don't know what I was thinking, but I don't. This is one of those things where I genuinely don't know why I do why I did what I did. And there's a double backup move that I could have played. Anyway, let's go through a few of these. I take first to move the queen over, right? On my head, I'm like, I gotta move the queen over, and then I'll jump in, right? Not realizing that after queen takes, my knight will hang in this line, so I can't do that. But, and I had to look at the computer for this, you can actually do bishop takes, this takes, and then knight moves in here to knight to d4, and then we get this beautiful attack where now I'm pinning, but it's okay because I keep attacking. You take, I take, takes, and I get the bishop now. And it's still not over because after trying to pin these two minor pieces, you can play f6 to protect, and then you attack still, and then you attack the rook. So then you're just totally fine. This is a like minus 2.5 position. I would be still threatening this bad bishop, and I've got a pretty good game for myself here. But I don't know. I didn't like look well enough, and so after queen takes, I see the knight pin, and I realize that I can't take here anymore, and I've started to panic, and I don't find moving the knight out. So instead, I take because I can't take the other way because I would lose my knight, and then it would just be an equal trade. And then I've like lost a pawn for no real reason, and then that just felt like a bit of a mistake. But this is actually also a mistake. But we'll go into it in a bit. My opponent actually doesn't capitalize on it and instead takes on f6. I think we get bishop to a4. I get into a lot of trouble here, and it's actually me who's not doing so hot. Now the rook's under attack, and pretty much all of my luster is gone after something like this. So instead, my opponent plays to give me back a little bit of a chance, and then I capture to just let's just do this, and then my opponent takes back. Now I did not consider this. I ended up playing knight to b4 to just kind of attack and see if I can jump in. But there is a beautiful line here I really like. It's bishop takes, knight takes pawn, bishop takes pawn, rook out, rook takes e1, rook e1, and bishop e5. And here I have now gone up a pawn for a bishop due to this like little messy trades over here. And now my opponent is 2 pawns versus 1 pawn, and I've got the bishop for it. So this is actually really quite nice. But you know, c'est la vie. We don't go there. We go somewhere else instead. Instead I go b4, giving my opponent back the advantage. I don't know how to play chess, but it's okay. And then we get bishop takes, rook takes, queen takes. And I'm starting to get into some serious trouble here. My opponent takes back with the knight. We get a series of trades, and now it is clear that I have accidentally gone into a +2 pawn in game. So I decide to set up a mate threat. My opponent is 1467, so probably isn't going to blunder back rank. I think that there's like on chess.com puzzles, there's what, like 40 of those before you get to the next puzzles. So I didn't expect that my opponent was going to miss this. But instead they go to queen d2 to protect. And I attack. And begging for trades. You know, if I trade queens now, I'm just gonna be in a lot of trouble. So I decide to protect my pawn. Here I was expecting like something along the lines of well, I'm not 100% sure what I was expecting. There's a few times here that this game gets a little bit funky, but I know I'm in trouble here. I know that if my opponent plays it correctly, there's gonna be something. So I'm just trying to at this point try to find some tactics, see if I can bring this down into a better in game than what it currently is, because at the moment I am not doing so hot. So my opponent gets some luft. I take a second and decide to give it to myself as well. And queen f1, queen d2, and queen c1. Realizing that I am going to try and go for some pawns. So here, like I say, at 26 minutes I play queen e2, and both of us are still over an hour on the clock in a game in which we have 3 hours to play it out. So 26 moves in, and I noticed when I looked around the room that like every single game besides my game was still on move like 14, 15, and here I am just like pushing as fast as I can. However, I have started to pull back a little bit of the advantage towards my way. It's not looking beautiful, but it's looking okay. I'm just waiting for my opponent to make like one like slip up here, and then we get c4. Well, I decide that I'm gonna try and attack the pawn and threatened mate as well. Obviously, crush, and then like we mate here on g2. So my opponent has to stop that. And here, because of the c-pawn push, I felt to myself that I'd be okay accepting the queen trade now. After this, my opponent kind of took a second to think and was like, oh, shoot. And I was like, look, like, this is an endgame where it's going to end up being rook and pawn versus rook. And now it's equal. Now I'm okay. Now I gotta tell my opponent, like, okay, if you want to try and win, show it to me. Show me how to win. So I just start charging up the board. We get e2, king e7, king d2, king d7, rook c5, king d6. I'm just trying to push at this point. And we get into a situation which I finally gotten my king to the side of the pawn at the cost of the rook is now blocking access to my king on the other side. However, so my king is no longer available to this side of the board, but my opponent's king cannot get to this side of the board. So we're okay. Like, things seem to be in a situation where, yeah, sure, there's like a little advantage here or there that could get eked out, but who knows what's going to happen here. Rook d3 is played in an attempt to trade, because obviously if I trade here and my opponent takes and I try to, like come up for the attack, my opponent has no need to save this pawn, but instead just start charging pawns down the board here, and then right at the end, right when it's okay for them to get rid of it, can charge over with the king while I have to take the pawn, and then it's just going to end up bad for me. So I was like, no, I am not going to trade. I instead allow my opponent to come back to the other side of the board. But I'm realizing that maybe this means that I can actually take the pawn now with the king. Huge blunder, apparently. Actually, like, really bad blunder. This is the worst that it's been for me the entire game. The computer now says that it's a +4 advantage after the automatic king d7 saying, okay, you take a pawn, I take a pawn. I don't know. I just said okay. My opponent says fine, and now it's h5 to protect that pawn. Feels like an only move. We get h4. Now here, it's back to feeling okay. Now, had my opponent played rook to f6, there is no way for me to protect this pawn anymore, and I'm not attacking any of their pawns, so I'm in a lot of danger. I was very thankful to see... Oh, no. I was very thankful to see this line start to peter out after h4. Because now I'm like, okay, this is back to another draw. And I think my opponent's starting to get a little nervous too, because he's like, okay, I've got one pawn, what am I doing? So I get king to d5, attempting to try to find some opposition and keep my opponent from keeping up with the attack on the pawn. Because now I can start doing checks in the leg as well. So we get f3, and I go king e5, and now we're dead equal. So my opponent plays, and this is where I'm confused, because my opponent plays rook to f4, and so I think I wrote down. Okay, so here's the thing: is I wrote down f3, but I can't tell if I was wrong or right, because after king e5 and rook f4, well, I pick up the rook by checking, and then I just take. But then in my notes, it says that I played king e6 here. And that just... Well, no, that would also not make sense, because then I could snap the pawn here with the rook. There is a potential here. I'm not gonna lie. It was late, and I was getting kind of tired. I might have missed a free rook. And if that's the case, I didn't deserve the win at all. I've already made a few mistakes leading up to this, so it was a great test of skill. So we'll just hope that maybe I got a little bit of notation wrong. But we do end up in playing g4, and I take. My opponent takes, and I just start moving up. We get check, and I come down. And here I was like, okay, this is over. There's no way. Like, whatever pawn they push, like my pawn takes, and you can't really get your king in the action. And then we get f4, and I play rook to h3, just simply threatening the pawn. You can't really do anything about it because you come up, and I come up, and then, you're walking over, and you're not really ever getting in, and no matter which one of these pawns you come for, this one will protect, and my king can protect the other side, so it's not too big of a deal. At this position, my opponent spilled a big glass of water all over the board. I think that they, saw the f4 move and then saw me come over and was like, oh shoot, that is draw. After being like in such an advantage so many times, I was very thankful to have eked my way out with a draw. It is a shame that I missed a few of these tactics. I just have to get better at that. It is the new year, and I am restarting a cycle after a few weeks off in classical, so it makes sense that I made a few mistakes, but I will be honing in coming to the next game, so I'm very excited for that. Thank you so much for hanging out and exploring this position with me. Feel free to leave some notes in the comments. I am desperate to get better at chess this year. Currently at 1251. I think my live rating's around like 1,300, but we'll see. I want to keep growing, and I want to keep learning, and this is definitely going to be a big year for me at the Marshall. So anyway, thank you so much for sticking around for the video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.